Hello there, Michelle Short here with Terrific Tags with Michelle. Today I'm embracing my dark side with the new Crafter Flower April Kiss Camellia. I'm here on the Altenew YouTube channel on the first and third Saturday of the month. So if you enjoy my videos, I'd love for you to subscribe. So this is the new Crafter Flower April Kiss Camellia layering die set. It's absolutely beautiful. There are 2 flowers in the set with lots of layers, 5 leaves and 2 sentiments. Now ordinarily with the Crafter flower sets you would cut everything once, but for this top flower here you do actually need to cut 2 layers of most of the flowers. So you would just run this through your die cutting machine twice and it indents the numbers, so it tells you which ones you need to cut twice anyway, so those kind of 3 larger flowers. So I've cut them from some classic Crest 110 solar white cardstock and I'm placing them down onto my sticky mat here so that it holds them in place while I do some ink blending on top. So I've got those 2 layers of the larger layer there, and then also this slightly smaller flower, and then the one that's just about a little bit smaller than that as well. And what I'm doing here is I like to actually lay down the layers in the orientation that they're going to be stuck down to each other. That just helps if I want to have the ink blending slightly darker on one side or lighter on the other. In this instance with these flowers it doesn't really matter too much because I am just having the darker colour towards the centre of the petals, but sometimes it's just a little bit easier for me to be able to see while I'm doing the ink blending how they're actually going to end up on the card. So I'm using the Cool Summer Night collection of inks here. This is the Fresh Dye inks and I'm starting off with the lightest shade and I'm just going to add a base layer of that. Now a lot of this is going to get covered up, so really did I need to start with the lightest layer? Probably not, but I just like to work in layers. I find it a lot easier for me to start with the lightest shade and then build up the colour as I go. I am going to still have some of the kind of lighter shade sort of still peeking through just on the edges of the petals, so I did still want to start with this lightest shade and I used a small blending tool for that. I just need kind of like I say a light layer just so that most of that colour is just going to peep out from the edges. I can now go in with the second lightest shade and just add a layer of that as well, focusing most of that colour towards the centre of the petals. And then for these smaller pieces here at the bottom, I'm just adding a little bit of the ink blending just to one side, just to help make them a little bit more dimensional. And I'm using a mini blending brush for that. And then I'm going to stick with the mini blending brush for the next 2 layers because I want to have these inks be quite saturated in colour. I do want there to be quite a contrast on these flowers, so really dark in the centre and then sort of moving out to the lighter shades on the outside edges of the petals. And I find with the mini blending brushes, because they've got denser bristles, I do find that they automatically just lay down more of a saturation of colour. But I also want to try and focus that colour towards the centre of the petals, like I say, and it's just a little bit easier with a smaller brush. So now I can go in with the darkest shade here, and the flowers there, especially the ones, these larger ones here at the top, they're the base layers, so most of this is going to get covered up, so I'm not too concerned if it does look a little bit splotchy. Just want to get that colour down. So finishing off here with the slightly smaller petals, and then I'm just going to add the tiniest little amount just to the edges here of these pieces at the bottom, these tiny little inside pieces of the flower. And then I'm not going to stick anything down at this point, but what I want to do is just kind of place all of the petals on top of each other. So although they're not in the right way that they're going to be stuck down, I can see if I need to add a bit more darkness towards the bottom layers. And I do think I do. I think it does look really pretty as is, but there's not too much of a distinction between the bottom layers and the top layers in terms of colour. So I'm just going to go back in with the darkest shade here and that mini blending brush, and just add more darkness towards the outside edges of those petals. And again, it doesn't really matter too much if it looks a little bit messy because the bulk of this is going to get covered up anyway. You only really see just those tiny little outer edges of the petals. And then I'm just going to do the same thing with the other flower here. Again, just place them on top of each other just so that I can see if I'm happy with the saturation of colour. And I think I am with this one as is, because there's sort of more open areas on these petals compared to the first flower. I think it works quite nicely not to have them so dark, which is quite nice. So just layering these up, and I'm pretty happy with those. So I can move on to the leaves. And again, I've cut these from Classic Crest 110 Solar White cardstock. I did end up cutting more than I actually needed to. I find especially with leaves it's quite helpful just to have some extras if I need them, because I'm never sure exactly of the arrangement that I might want to do, and so it's helpful just having those extra ones if I need them. I'm using the Green Valley Crisp dye inks here, and again I'm going from lightest to darkest. Do I need the lightest shade? Again, probably not. But I do find that they blend quite nicely once you sort of had them in layers. If I just went directly to the dark shade, I don't think I would get as smooth of a blend. So just going here through all of the colours. And I really love this one here. It's quite bright, and so it just really kind of brightens up those leaves. But I am going to go in with the darker shade just to really darken them up. Most of the darker colour does get lost, unfortunately, because I do pop them behind the flowers, but it does just sort of add that extra dimension onto the leaves. And I don't often always use this colour when I'm doing ink blending, like the darkest shade, but as you can see, it really does make quite a big difference to these leaves. So I can just finish off here with that last one. So now I can start adhering all of the layers to create the flower. So I'm starting off with the base layer, the one that has got the number 1 kind of indented into it, and I'm placing it down so that the number is readable from where I am. I'm then grabbing the second layer, which is number 2, and again I want to make sure that the number is visible kind of like as I lay it down, so that it's not upside down or anything like that. I've added some liquid glue onto the back of this piece, but before I stick it down, I'm just manipulating those petals a little bit, just to add a little bit of dimension onto them. This flower automatically is really very dimensional because it's got so many layers to it, but it is still nice just to add that extra bit of dimension onto these petals. So I do that before I stick the layer down, but then I also do that after I've stuck it down as well. So it's really easy to do with this keyhole system. The only thing for this particular flower is just remembering that you've got the petals the right way up, because you've got those layers that, you know, you've cut twice. It is quite easy just to accidentally add them the wrong way round, but to be honest with you, I think you'd still get a beautiful flower anyway. So again, just manipulating those petals a little bit, and then I can just do the same thing for these last layers here as well. And it's just such a beautiful flower. Although I haven't gone for the traditional colour of the camellia, I think you could do this in lots of different colour combinations, and I still think it would look really pretty. So just finishing off here with this little piece, and I'm just looking at the instructions there so I can make sure that I place it down where it's supposed to be placed, and then I can pop this last layer on top. So I'm just going to make sure that that's really well stuck down, and then just manipulate those petals a little bit again. And then I can do the exact same thing here for the second flower. Really easy to line up that keyhole in the center. And then I can just finish off with the last layer here. And I really love that this flower is looking in a different direction. It just works really nicely with the other flower. So again, making sure that that's really well stuck down, and then manipulating those petals a little bit. I have then cut 2 tags from the Terrific Tags die set from black cardstock. I'm adding some glue tape onto the back of one so that I can sandwich those 2 tags together. That's going to give me a little bit of extra stability to the tag, but also make it so that it's nice and neat on the back if I want to write a personal message. Ordinarily, when I'm card making or tag making, I do tend to gravitate towards light bases rather than dark ones, but for today I thought I would go with the black base, and I thought it would help the flowers pop a little bit. This is my original card that I created on the white base, and although the flowers look beautiful, I think that they're going to pop a little bit more on the black base. But I do really love the orientation of these flowers, so I'm going to use it as a guide for me to stick down these flowers and leaves on my tag. So I'm going with the exact same design here, and I am changing the kind of movement of the leaves a little bit, although actually I think I did end up pretty much them being in the same place. They weren't sticking out as far because obviously I've got less room on this tag than I do on the card. So I'm just finishing off there with that leaf there. And I do just like to arrange everything to start with before I stick anything down. In case I want to change something, it's really easy for me just to change it up before I have stuck them down. So now once I'm happy with the placement, I'm adding some glue tape onto the back of the leaves here, making sure not to add too much to the edge of the leaves in case they overlap the tag. And obviously I don't want that adhesive showing. And I do, where possible, like to leave everything in place and just try and pop them underneath. It's just a little bit easier for me to get the placement correct. So I can just finish off here with that last leaf. And then for the flowers, I am going to adhere them down with some liquid glue. Ordinarily I would go with a foam tape, but because these flowers are so dimensional, I don't really need any extra dimension on this tag. So just sticking those down with the liquid glue. So let me know in the comments whether you gravitate towards a light card base or a tag base in this instance, or a darker one. I do think that the flowers do really pop against the dark background. But like I say, I do generally gravitate towards a lighter background. I just tend to do that. I'm not sure why, but I am gravitating more these days towards a darker base. So let me know in the comments what your preference is. So just making sure that these are really well stuck down. And again, I'm just popping up those petals a little bit in case I kind of flattened any while I was adhering those down. And just using the tweezers for that as well, which is really helpful. I have then stamped and heat embossed a sentiment from the Mini Delight Plants and Vases stamp set. I love the sentiments in this set. A lot of them are really small in size, which is quite helpful for me for tags. So I've cut that down into a strip, and I'm adding some instant dimension foam tape onto the back of this, and then just cutting that foam tape down to size. I can then remove the backings off of that foam tape, and then just using my tweezers here so that I can kind of hover it in place, see where I want it to be placed before I press that down. And I wasn't sure here where I was actually going to place the sentiment. Because these flowers are so dimensional, it is a little bit difficult to add the sentiment on top. The side on the right hand side is really nicely stuck down, but the side on the left isn't so much. So I'm taking another piece of the instant dimension foam tape and just popping that underneath, so that gives that side a little bit more stability. I'm then going to finish off with probably my new favourite embellishment, and that's the crystal clear enamel dots. I really love them because in this instance, especially on this tag, I think they look a little bit like raindrops. I think they're very, very pretty. So just adding a few on top of the leaves, and then also a few just kind of popped underneath there as well. Or this one, I should say, is kind of popped underneath that leaf there at the top. Just popping them in place. Once I'm happy with the placement, I'm going to really press those down. And that is the tag finished for today. I absolutely love these flowers. I think they're so pretty and very dimensional, like I say. And then I also really love how the colours pop against that dark base. Links to the products that I used will be listed in the description bar on YouTube and also over on the Altenew blog. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Hey there, Lydia here. I really do hope that you've just enjoyed the video. If so, please subscribe to the Altenew YouTube channel. Also, turn on the notification bell so you can get your daily dose of crafty techniques and tutorials just like this. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.